Now, please join me in welcoming Grocery Shop's opening keynote, Rodney McMullen, Chairman and CEO of Kroger. Rodney will be interviewed by Melissa Repko, retail and consumer reporter at CNBC.
Opening music.
I love it.
Good energy to start our day and the
absolutely.
conference. Great
Thanks,
to see you.
Oh, thanks so much. Great seeing you again.
What better conversation to start out with talking about Kroger and its future, because so much of what you're doing with Albertsons and the merger is looking toward the future and thinking about all of the disruptive forces that grocers are facing. So before we talk about some of your recent news with the divestitures and the deal with CNS, I wanted to talk first about, why did you feel like the time was right to merge with Albertsons? And do you feel like there's been more urgency since the time when you first announced this potential deal in October of last year?
Well, around your second part of the question in terms of urgency, once you decide to do something and once you come to agreement, everything is urgent then, because you really do want to get the two companies merged so you can start doing the things that are good for communities, good for associates, and good for customers, because we're going to be able to invest in pricing. But if you look at the original premise of the merger, the values of the two companies were so similar. And if you look in terms of some of the things that are being worked on, scale was even more important when you look at retail media and some of the aspects around that, the use of data, the use of technology, the amount of money that you need to invest in technology, and having a bigger company to be able to spread those costs and leverage those capabilities was increasingly important. And when you look at Albertsons, one of the things I've always been impressed, if you look at what Bob Miller did on putting the company together, and then what Vivek did in terms of building on what Bob did, we had so much respect for the Albertsons and the Albertsons team, and the talent they have is just really exciting, and I can't wait till when we get to be one company.
Last week you had some big news. You announced that you had struck a deal with CNS to divest more than 400 stores, also some facilities involved, some private labels involved. There are some critics of the deal who draw some comparisons with Albertsons and Safeway. I'm curious why you feel this divestiture is a significant step, and what you would say is the difference from that deal that makes this different.
Yeah, if you look, one of the things that we did was study the prior case in terms of what was criticized and why. And you had a situation where a company was highly levered. They went from like 15 stores to 150 stores or so with very little debt. They really didn't have the management depth across the organization. They immediately had to change names, and they raised prices, and all of those things. So when you look at, for us, on finding a divestiture buyer, it was really important to find somebody that had a strong balance sheet, had operated in the business and understood the grocery business and had scale, had talent, understood what they had and didn't have to be able to, and one of the things that we're doing is providing two divisions, all the organization to CNS. So it's all those things are the reasons why we felt so confident that CNS would check off all those boxes. And then CNS also committed to recognizing labor contracts day one, and that was a commitment that we had made to the union. We had talked to dozens of potential buyers. Some of those were non-union players, some were union players, but one of the commitments that we had made to the union was we would sell them to somebody that recognized the labor contracts.
We are in front of an audience of a lot of your competitors, also some of your partners in the form of suppliers, and some of them might be a little nervous about this deal. Frankly, negotiating with a bigger company can sometimes come with a perception of being strong-armed or having some difficulty there. What is your argument to this audience that this merger is potentially beneficial for them and not anti-competitive for some of the rivals in the crowd?
Yeah, our partnership with everybody is, we don't look at it as an arm wrestle. We look at how do we grow our combined businesses. And a month or so ago, I had a chance to spend some time with a couple of our farmers in Colorado. And originally, they sold products to a few King Soopers and City Market stores. And now when they're in season, they sell it to hundreds of stores. They actually have partnerships with a lot of more local farmers. They've been able to expand their own head count. So, I just don't look at any of this as, you lose, I win. To me, we have to figure out a way where we both win together. And, any time that if you have a CPG trying to raise prices more than what's economically justifiable, we do have our brands. And what we find is when somebody does do that, our brands will gain share because the quality of our brands is incredibly good when you look at across the portfolio, Simple Truth, Private Selection, and the banner brands.
That transitions well to my next question, which is, on the recent earnings call, you spoke about how a lot of the CPG companies have been more willing to come to the table and negotiate with you. I'm curious what you're seeing on the consumer side and also what you're seeing with suppliers in light of this very dynamic environment we're seeing with inflation.
Yeah, if you look at from a customer standpoint, when this is more answer than you want, just tell me to stop. But it's really fascinating. You have customers that are in two different buckets. You have a set of customers that really are under economic stress. And you really feel for people in that situation. It's people that are generally working, but their wages haven't kept up with inflation. And you see aggressive changes from that customer base in terms of buying smaller product sizes, going to our brands, anything they can do, cooking at home more, but anything they can do to stretch their budget. If you look at customers that are more upscale, that customer is continuing to buy the same as always. And for that customer, convenience would be increasingly important. So if you look at an area that we have strong growth in is cut fruit. As an example, but you see they certainly on buying wine, you'll see them buy the nicer wines and some of the other things. So it's an unusual situation because it's so bifurcated, and the customer that's really constrained on their budget, their behavior within the month changes as well.
We are seeing a lot of your competitors that are known for discounting gain market share during this time, Walmart being one of them, but also we've seen, a lot of growth in terms of store count by Aldi, Lidl, a lot of the dollar stores as well. How can you compete with companies that are known for those low prices, and how does your private label strategy fit into that?
Well, if you look at overall, our go-to-market strategy is really focusing on our associates and the service they provide to our customers. We're very active with promotions. We're something when it's on promotion is actually much cheaper than any of those, and our focus on our fresh departments. And for us, we'll use the word no compromise because we don't think a customer should ever have to compromise between high quality fresh, a great service, and a good value for the money. So for us on going to market, that's how we go to market. If you look at our actual household growth, we actually had household growth for the 9th consecutive quarter. If you look at that customer, the more upscale customer, we had much stronger growth there. And you're never satisfied with market share. So every day you work a little bit harder to make sure that every customer is getting the value that they want.
How are you leaning into those lower price points? I know you launched Smart Way, which is your opening price point brand a year ago. Have seen a lot of growth there. I think you mentioned on the earnings call recently you've had displays of items $3 and less, which would potentially cater to shoppers that might go to a dollar store or an Aldi. What else can you do to attract that budget-constrained shopper? Yeah,
you're doing everything you can to make sure the customer understands the value for their money. And for us on like dollar stores, we're very confident if somebody takes the time to look at cost per ounce. But in some areas, what we found was customers were buying certain items because of a particular dollar point. So you will see us in some cases having items that would be $1. In the example you gave, Melissa, would be $3. But all of those things are things that we're doing. Smart Way is a brand that we started. It's been about a year ago, and we continue to add SKUs. And for that, it really is the customer looking at that entry price point, a great value for the quality. And you're always, I always think of it as plates. You're spinning a bunch of plates. And one of the things we're doing is to try to make sure that we're supporting that customer. And we're also, that customer will be eating at home more, and how do we make where it's easy for them to have a meal on, where they can put a full meal on the table for, $8 or $10 at most.
This morning, Kroger had a little bit of news about what its post-merger future could look like, and you said that you are committing to increasing the amount of shelf space that will be committed to local products. Wanted to ask you a little bit about what that may look like and why that makes sense from a business stance, not just kind of a feel-good perspective.
Yeah, I want to broaden your question a little bit broader than what you were asking. One of the things for us on merging with Albertsons that we get incredibly excited about is feeding the hungry is something that's important to Albertsons, and it's something that's been important to Kroger for a long time. And several years ago, we had committed to providing 3 billion meals to those in need, working with food banks. And we announced that we had been able to accomplish that a couple of years early. One of the commitments that we've made once the merged companies is by 2030, we'll provide 10 billion meals. And I don't know about you, but I always have trouble to put in context a number of 10 billion. And one of the things, if you look, it's everybody that lives in Chicago, Boston, Seattle, and one other big city, we're able to feed everybody in those cities every meal every day for 2 years. We also committed several years ago, Kroger put in place what we called Feed Your Future, where we provide educational support for our associates. And I always say people can get their GED to their PhD. And we've committed on, once we merge the companies, that we will provide that to the Albertsons associates as well. And Kroger's had over 16,000 people take advantage of that. And the other day, I was talking to somebody that had just worked in one of our stores, and their aspiration was to get an accounting degree, and they just finished their degree. And to me, it's so cool to be able to support someone to do that. If you look at the announcement we made this morning on local, it's just one extension of of something that's really been important to Albertsons and really been important to us, is how do you identify local products that the customer is going to love, but they may or may not know about. So first of all, you got to give it shelf space, but then you have to figure out a way to, how do you tell the customer? And then you got to figure out a way to get them to try it. And the commitment we made this morning was at least 30 incremental products for every single store. And, I always think it's fascinating. In Cincinnati, there's a local barbecue called Montgomery Inn. And years ago, we worked with them in one of our manufacturing plants to be able to produce their barbecue sauce. And now they're in over 1,000 stores. And whenever I talk to the people that it's now this son and grandsons that operate the business, and granddaughter, and they tell me that they make way more money selling barbecue sauce than they ever make, running a restaurant. And those are the kind of opportunities this commitment will allow, because when somebody's got an amazing, great product, we'll be able to get it into more stores, get customers to try it, and before you know it, you'll have some entrepreneur that will probably end up selling out to a big CPG at some point. Mm-hmm. That seems like it's kind of the cycle, is they come up with some incredibly great idea, customers fall in love with it, and then over time somebody bigger buys it. And,
yes.
We were talking about Dot's Pretzel.
Yes,
earlier.
Exactly. Acquired by Hershey, who I'm talking to later this afternoon. I would think another competitive reason why you are adding more local products is because you compete with some regional grocery powerhouses. H-E-B in Texas is one. Publix in Florida is a relatively new competitor because you've broken into that market with Ocado. What else can you do to hold on to that unique flavor of these grocery stores as you potentially get bigger with Albertsons, to not use your scale in such a way that it creates kind of a vanilla sameness across your stores? Yeah,
I love the question. I love the challenge too. And to me, that's one of the things, if everything we try to do, if the customer can't see it, we try to make sure that we do it one way across the whole company. So if you think about a supply chain system, and how do you take a day or 2 days out of freshness on getting it from the farmer, to one of our stores. Those are things that it's really hard for a smaller regional chain to do. If you think about technology, we're in the process of upgrading our point of sale equipment. And if we had 100 stores, the amount of cost that it costs to create the new POS would be just more than what you could afford. So the things that customer can't see, we're trying to leverage that across a big company. We will do everything we can to make sure, most of our customers shop 1, 2, or 3 of our stores at most. And for us, that's really important, is for a customer to feel like it's only their store. And we feel like we've really done an awesome job when a customer says, well, that's my Ralph's, or that's my Food for Less, or that's my Fred Meyer, because then you know that you've been able to balance that on providing the economies of scale so you could continue to invest in pricing and give the customer a better value for the money, continuing to invest in wages because we've raised our average hourly rate by over 30% in the last 5 years. But at the same time, doing things where that customer knows that those associates in that store are taking care of them.
You are doing a lot of interesting things on the online side, and we could have a whole session about what you're doing with Ocado, but tell us a little bit about the learnings recently. You posted 12% growth year over year in the most recent quarter. You've expanded both in Florida, a new market, and then also in your own backyard in Cincinnati, where you have a strong foothold with customers. What have been some of the most interesting insights in more recent months as we are more firmly, let's hope, in a post-pandemic world?
Yeah, if you look at post-COVID, it's fascinating. The customer bounces back and forth between those channels. So sometimes they want delivery, sometimes they want 30-minute delivery, sometimes they want to pick it up, and sometimes they want to shop. And for us, we're doing everything we know how to do to make it totally seamless for the customer to be able to bounce back and forth between those channels. If you look at pre-COVID, we probably would have felt like it was more one direction or the other. And what we find is even, customers love going into a store, discovering new items, talking to our associates. I think about Murray's Cheese. It's really hard to create the experience of Murray's Cheese online, but when you're in a store, you can, one of our cheesemongers can talk to you and say, Melissa, what kind of cheese do you like? And take something and, give it to you on the spot. And that's how it all works together. And, long term, we totally believe and are confident that more and more people will shop online. And how do you make to where you can shop online just as easy as going into a store? But customers just like to bounce back and forth.
There's always been a little bit of tension there with grocers. They had to adapt to this during the pandemic, but of course you're pushing people to a form of shopping that's not as profitable. What are steps that you've taken to get closer to making a in-store sale and an online sale more equal in terms of profitability?
Yeah, when I'm talking to our investors, and I always feel a little guilty because I think it's a Ford commercial, but I always tell them, job one is don't lose that customer. Job two is we have to figure out a way to have the same profitability of that customer that shops online when we're picking their products versus them picking it themselves. And we have to deliver it to their house. So it's a journey that we're on. You continue, our store teams, and Ocado obviously is incredibly efficient from using technology and robots. But you're increasingly, as you gain volume, being able to do those at lower costs. And then you also identify new revenue opportunities. Retail media would be one of our fastest growing parts of our business. If you look at our alternative profit businesses in total, last year was a $1.2 billion profit. And those are the things that allow you to be able to afford to pick somebody's groceries for them, deliver them, and still give them the same great value as shopping in one of our stores.
I know you also have a membership program, Kroger Boost, to get a revenue stream with those online grocery shoppers. How important important is that to making the business model work?
Yeah, if you look, it's more the stickiness of it.
Okay.
So it's not necessarily the income that you make off of it, but the stickiness of it, because our dream is, if you think food, you think Kroger, or one of our banners. When somebody becomes a member of our program, when they decide they want ice cream for dinner after dinner that night, they just go online and order ice cream. And it's just, when you become top of mind, you're able to gain share. Well over half of our delivery business would be by Boost members. And, for us, it's just part of that overall equation to, our aspiration is for people to fall in love with the experience, fall in love with our associates, and then just give an incredible value.
Well, we're running out of time, but one last question for you. Any other sneak peeks you can offer of the future if this merger does go through, beyond the more local products on the shelf? How will the shopper experience change? Well,
the shopper experience will change, but because starting day one, we'll begin lowering prices, and we've committed on the synergies to invest $500 million in lowering prices day one. We've committed to our associates over that same period of time to invest an additional $1 billion in wages. And the other thing that we'll do is to learn some of the things that each company does better than the other. So I've got to believe there'll be some things on fresh and product variety and wine and some cheeses and some other things that we both will be able to learn from each other, so the customer experience will be just that much better, and the community support will be awesome as well.
Well, I know both I and our whole audience will be curious to watch. So thank you for your time today. Really appreciate it.
Thanks so much, Melissa. Really appreciate it. Thanks, everyone.